My name is Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be talking about the universe of Squadron 42, specifically at the history of the UEE Navy. Now, fans of the channel may note that I already did a video on the UEE Navy a while back. In fact, it was one of the first lore videos I did on this channel, back when this segment was called Galactic Historian. The reason why I've decided to go over the topic again is because of the evolving nature of both my own knowledge and skill, as well as the evolution of the lore of Star Citizen, and as a result Squadron 42 itself, as we have more stories and fleshed out structures as the game gets more nailed down. So with the release of this video to the public, I will be unlisting that older video, though you'll still be able to find it on the channel and even in the top right. I will be assuming this is your first look at the Navy, however, so I will be covering some of the same ground I did in that video. With that said, let's look at the main military force of humanity in the 30th century, the United Empire of Earth Navy. To start, I will explain something that has confused some folks in the past: the fact that this space force is called a navy. Without going into an hour-long video essay on the history of sci-fi tropes, I will just say that both Star Citizen and Squadron 42 are based on classic 70s and 80s sci-fi like Aliens, Blade Runner, Star Wars, and Battlestar Galactica. Part of the tropes of that time was to call space-based military forces the Navy. This was borrowing from earlier tropes of the 50s and 60s, where space was replacing the Wild West and high seas as the popular location to set action adventure books, TV, movies, and more. As a result, space became a, quote, sea of stars, unquote, and thus the military force that patrolled it became a space navy. It's such a common trope that you likely didn't even realize you've seen it before, with organizations like Starfleet, the Colonial Fleet, Imperial Navy, and Systems Alliance Navy, all using Navy or naval terms for their space militaries. Other series like Halo and Babylon 5 specifically use naval ranks with their space-based militaries, which buy into the idea of a space navy. I say all that because it isn't ever specifically mentioned as to why the space-based military is called the Navy in the verse. It just is. While I think it would be neat for the writers of CIG to come up with a reason for this name, I don't think it's required. It's a common trope, and until recently, it's just been accepted along with the idea of Space Marines just being called Marines in most sci-fi genres. Now let's get down to the brass tacks of the UEE Navy. The Navy is the largest branch of the UEE military, with large logistical fleets often in charge of transporting the resources of the Army and Marines, as well as government aid, and combat fleets that operate in every system of the UEE, often securing the borders of the Empire from pirates, smugglers, and the ever-present Vanduul threat. It is often the first and last line of defense for humanity, and has some of the most powerful ships and weapons humanity has ever created. Every member of the Navy is known as a starman, similar to how every member of modern navies are considered sailors. It can be a little confusing though, since there's a rank of starman in the Navy as well. Otherwise, the rank structure of the UEE Navy is rather straightforward. For enlisted, it goes Starman Recruit, Starman, Leading Starman, Junior Petty Officer, Chief Petty Officer, and Master Chief Petty Officer. For officers, it goes Ensign, Lieutenant Junior Grade, Lieutenant, Lieutenant Commander, Commander, Captain, Commodore, Rear Admiral, Vice Admiral, Admiral, Grand Admiral, and Legatus Navium. It should be noted that all who graduate through Flight Academy and become a pilot seem to be automatically given the rank of Lieutenant, as only officers can be pilots. It also seems like there might not be a traditional university military academy structure for officers like we see in many modern militaries, though there might be something akin to that just not listed yet. it does seem that a lot of commanding officers in the UEE Navy have gone through Flight Academy. So it may be that the Flight Academy works as the gateway for officers. The culture of the Navy can be summed up in its official oath, which has rarely changed from the original oath created in 2380 with the first unified government of humanity, and goes as such. Hear and witness that I do solemnly pledge, mind and body, that I will serve and protect the united empire of Earth against all who would seek to harm it and its people. That I will faithfully discharge the duties asked of me, and when called upon, I will defend the empire with my life. I will be the sword and the shield, that I will not falter nor fail, but fight and win. That I swear to do all in my power to act as a guardian of freedom and justice, as a champion of honor and valor, and a true and proud member of the UEE Navy. Since the fall of the Measures, the Navy has prided itself on being the shield more than the sword of humanity, and the reflection of the new, kindler and gentler humanity which the new UEE sought to project. Standard training for the Navy begins when recruits arrive via Navy transport at MacArthur in the Killian system. These recruits are usually diverse, most being human from all over the Empire, but many are Tavarans, a race humanity defeated, conquered, and absorbed into the UEE, with possibility of other alien species as well if they live in the Empire. These recruits are immediately given a choice, known as the Rubicon, which is a final chance to back out. After which, the recruits will be divided into groups and assigned to their training camp, known as a forge. They will also meet with their divisional officer, who will be their first mentor to train them for naval service. After an extended period of intense drilling, physical fitness, and education in military theory and technology, the recruits will transition into candidacy phase of their training. During this time, they will undergo a series of physical, psychological, and intellectual tests to determine where in the Navy they would be best fit for. Some may move to the Flight Academy, some to research, and even fewer may even be detailed for Marine training. From this point on, the recruit will receive dedicated training into whatever discipline they've been selected for. This will account for their remainder of their training and will end with their first ship assignment, which should coincide with the 1-year anniversary of their training unless there is a need for more specialized training. After that, they will deploy. A starman's deployment experience will vary based on their ship assignment and speciality. Many of these can take place far away from active combat zones or in dangerous areas of operations, and some of these do end up placing them in harm's way. All of the servicemen and women of the Navy are trained to endure these high-intensity situations. The structure of the Navy is rather complex, and is actually based on the IRL Navy structures today. It starts with the Imperator, who is the head of the entire UEE and makes all final decisions as needed. However, there is a group in charge of the UEE military called the High Command, which is made up of 3 leaders, one from each branch, called the Legatus Marinium from the Marines, Legatus Exercitus from the Army, and the Legatus Navium from the Navy. The Legatus Navium is over 3 different commands: Training Command, Logistics Command, and Fleet Command. The Training Command is in charge of any and all training for the Navy, including the training facilities on MacArthur. Logistics Command deals with intelligence, exploration, transport, R&D, special services, and personnel and records. Lastly, the Fleet Command is in charge of the active combat fleets. Each of these fleets is likely headed by a Grand Admiral. When it comes to the Fleet Command itself, each fleet is first broken down into overall fleets named after Earth constellations. These may also have numbers, as we know that the Second Fleet operated out of Vega during the Battle of Vega II. These fleets are commanded by an admiral. In each fleet is a regional fleet which covers a specific area that the larger fleet operates out of, like Earth region, Vega region, and so on. These are typically commanded by a vice admiral. In addition to these regional fleets, there are also specialty groups, usually squadrons, made up of specific combat ship types, like intercept fighter, strategic bomber, electronic warfare, and more. These groups are also commanded by a vice admiral. Next, we have the battle group, which is a subgroup of the regional fleets. This is also the main force that most people will see and interact with. They consist of 1 main carrier, 2 to 4 escorts, and combat and support vessels. Each battle group has its own unique number. These fleets are commanded by rear admirals. Next on the structure are the individual capital ships with their own designations, each designated the role that each ship will play. There can also be carrier wings at this same level of command attached to individual battle groups with their own command structure. Both capital ships and carrier wings are commanded by captains. Finally, we have the main structure which the Navy is built around: squadrons. These typically are also headed by captains, though commanders and down make up the main officers in charge of each squadron flight, which typically are made up of 6 individual ships, like Hornets, Gladiuses, Retaliators, etc. These squadrons and flights are the backbone of the Navy, working as forward screens, combat air patrols, scouting, and just about anything the Navy needs them to do. As a result, the current naval doctrine is heavily based around using squadrons of various craft to do most of the heavy lifting. And in Squadron 42, this is likely where you're going to end up, as a member of a flight of a larger squadron. In summation, the UEE Navy is a behemoth of an organization, with likely millions of diverse personnel from all over human space. As a result, the Navy can seem unwieldy, unable to be as precise or responsive in great numbers. However, when this leviathan of an organization gets moving, little can stand in its way. It truly is the shield and sword of humanity, a symbol of hope for many in the UEE. I'd like to thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, think about liking the video, subscribing for more content, and hitting the bell icon to be notified when these release. I'd also like to thank those on screen now for supporting the channel financially. If you want to throw in a few credits, think about becoming a member on YouTube, and if you want a bit more for your contribution, join the Ko-fi or Patreon. Patreons and Ko-fi members get early, ad-free access to all videos, including exclusive early access to my long-running complete history of Star Citizen lore series. Check those out now in the top right if you want to know what you're getting. Now I want to hear your thoughts on the UEE Navy and any other lore topics in the comments below. And as always, remember, ex historia ad astra.